So as I wait for you guys to answer some questions again, anything that you guys have questions about, it doesn't have to be about stuff in the blueprint, doesn't even have to be about stuff in SEO, anything advertising, just marketing related. What's up, Kyle? Kyle just asked, as I'm transitioning into a scaled up agency, I'm really interested to get some insight into how you and Webris has decided what service you'd offer through in-house services versus what you won't do, like development, and leave the onus on the client for. Good question, Kyle. So the way that we determine that is, first of all, again, just kind of looking at our core competency and who we want to work with in terms of in SEO. I mean, what we do is SEO, right? So anything outside of that, to your point, like web development, design, advertising, a lot of those kind of like tack on things that will either get asked for you by a client to do. If they're like, oh, you're doing SEO, can you do this too? Or if it's just necessary in order to get the campaign up and running, like development, right? You run a technical audit and there is a web developer needed to get some of that stuff done. So again, just looking at starting with ourselves and what you want to do as an agency too. I mean, who do you like to work with? Who do you want to work with? Do you have a niche? Are you working with a specific type of client? And then also understanding what type of client that you're working with is going to impact the type of service that you're running. So again, the type of clients that we like to focus on are mainly B2B. We're doing some e-com as well, but really focusing on that $4,000 to $8,000 a month retainer. Clients who usually have somebody in-house that can work with us. So if we are making recommendations, like things that need to get changed on the website or content that needs to get published or written, we make sure that they have that counterpart on their team ahead of time. And if they don't, then during the sales process, we're constantly talking to them and making sure that, you know, they're not going to be able to pay us to do it, but we might be able to connect them with a third party, but they're ultimately responsible for it. Now, a lot of clients don't like that. You might even lose some pitches for doing it that way. But we got to the point where we drew a line in the sand because, you know, I talk about this a lot when I do my consultations with some of you guys, is that don't sacrifice things in the short term for the long term, meaning just to get a contract in the door. You don't necessarily want to do things that you're going to regret doing later. That's going to jam you up operationally. That's going to end up to your service being not profitable. So again, things like development, we have one developer in-house that we use across, but he's a contractor. So I'd rather not use him on client campaigns, especially because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And because me and also my marketing team, like Cesar, Cesar's in here. I'm just going to let him, going to promote him to panelist here as well so he can join me. You know, we prefer to just not get ourselves in those situations because it's just going to end up being a headache down the line. And again, it can be tough sometimes to turn down revenue at times, but we prefer to keep things really around the core of what we have to offer. What's up, Cesar?
Hey guys.
So I don't know if a lot of you guys may or may not know Cesar. Cesar's been working with me now for it's been what, 5 years now almost, right, Cesar?
Yeah,
give or take.
At least that.
At least that. He's been running our agency now for a while, doing a great job. So he's going to be joining me on a lot of these because I'm a little bit far away from the tactical stuff, and Cesar's still down doing it with clients every day. So Skylar just asked too. So Kyle, let me know if that answered your question. It was kind of a long-winded answer, but again, the key there is making sure that you understand what you want to do, what your resources are, and then really communicating that and really over-communicating that during the sales process. Before you get anyone to sign anything, we just want to make sure that you're not signing up for something that you're going to have to do in the future. And I've been using this analogy a lot lately because we're renovating our home. I see it a lot with the contracting industry, is that they'll get you to kind of sign a contract and get in. And then there's all these different hidden things that may or may not have been including, like painting a wall or putting in, you know, like door frames or hanging doors, like little stuff like that, that we're now finding out that they don't do. So we now have to go out, and now I would never work with this contractor again. So it's the same thing with your agency. It's very similar, but if you communicate that up front and just make sure that everything is black and white, then you shouldn't necessarily have a problem. Skylar just asked, what's up, Skylar? Any advice on how a founder can transition out of the AM role when clients are used to dealing with them? That's a good question. Cesar might even want to weigh in on this too, because we've pretty much gone through that in the past couple of months. And I don't think, have we had any feedback, Cesar, from clients being like, where's Ryan?
No, not really. I think the first thing is whoever is going to take that place, just to make sure that, first of all, they're capable of doing that. You know, just kind of a slow transition. I got on a bunch of calls with Ryan when we were making that transition, and he would also let people know what's coming down the line and sort of like what they can expect. You just, in my opinion, you don't want to just kind of surprise them with, hey, all of a sudden now you're talking to this person. Even internally with our like own personnel, if I know someone is going to be heavily involved in a campaign, I'll make sure that they're on kickoff calls or, you know, calls to review a deliverable where they're going to be doing more of the follow-up work.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, there's Skylar. I mean, I think first and foremost is finding a person that you can hire that, you know, into Cesar's point too, before you just, you don't hire someone and just be like, hey, by the way, this guy's taking over everything. Go through the process of having them sit on client calls, get them comfortable with the client, get the client comfortable with them. And as long as that person does a good job, it's really not as big. Like, I think it's kind of the mental block of thinking, you know, the clients came here to work with me, and us especially too, because you see my face everywhere. But, you know, clients at the end of the day don't really care that much as long as the team is doing a good job. So as long as you have somebody who's capable of taking over that, and again, I wouldn't necessarily have them drink from the fire hose on that, because that's a big transition. Just work with them, train with them, sit on the calls while you're already doing, and then just let them handle it, you know, because a lot of things they're going to be able to do better than you do anyways, just like Cesar's done. You know, Cesar's actually much better at dealing with people and keeping a calm head than I am. So, you know, I think our client service has actually gotten a boost when I stepped away, because it was never really a strong point of mine. So Matt just asked, if you're working with a site that's under a year old with a DR of 9, what would you recommend they hire a PR company? Probably, you know, it's just, you also just have to be sensitive and careful to make sure that they can afford one, because PR companies are a good, any decent PR company is going to be at least $5,000 a month. So you have to be mindful of the budget that they're working with. And if they're only paying you $1,500 a month, you don't want to be like, hey, go pay this other company $5,000 a month. It's one of those things, again, where a lot of these issues, it's tough if you're already working with them, but they need to be identified during the sales process. So that way, 3 months into a campaign, you can't just bring this up out of nowhere and tell them that they got to spend another, you know, 50 to 60 grand a year to build up their domain authority, because they're also going to think that's what your job is. So, you know, if you're already stuck with it, I would say just keep pushing forward, do what you can with your time. If they're paying you to do some sort of outreach, just, you know, go through our link building module, the outreach module. There's a ton of information in there on how you can, you know, I recommend using a PR company because I'm lazy. And sometimes getting those quality of links isn't always necessarily worth our time to do so. But yeah, Cesar, do you have any thoughts on that? Low DA website, would you recommend that doesn't have links? Would you recommend they get a PR company?
Well, like you say, I think that depends on their budget. It's for sure, it's a challenge when you're working with a site like that. That's typically going to be a new site where very little has been done. So not only do you have to work on the off-page SEO, but more than likely you're basically going to have to build out their site, do an evaluation of their website architecture, and make sure that they have all the proper landing pages and that sort of thing. I think, especially when you're starting off with a site like that, a good strategy to use is just to get a good feel for the industry and the competitors. Take a look at their backlink profile if we're talking about building up the domain authority of the site, and just kind of start to see where you can cherry pick some type of links that you see from competitors that you know are good links. That's a good way to kind of just get started and get an idea as to what's possible and the type of links that you should be looking for. Because it may not just be contextual links. If you're dealing like with a local SEO client, for example, you may want to look at certain directories that you weren't even aware of. And you know, you could start building up the authority, the off-page SEO that you need in order to rank a site that's low DA or DR. And just also, like, to your point, what Ryan just said, being realistic about what's possible at the moment to rank for. You know, you're more than likely, unless it's not a very competitive space, you're not going to be able to just jump in and get them top 3 rankings for their most competitive term. That's where stuff like having a good content marketing strategy where you can go after some less competitive terms, just kind of get the wheels going. And as you start to move up in rankings for obviously the more coveted keywords.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So Matt, I don't have any PR companies that I would recommend. It's one of those things where you're probably just unfortunately going to have to do some research. We also have some PR people coming on in the coming weeks, definitely to keep them on. And I know we spoke about this too on our consulting call. So yeah, I mean, I would look into what Cesar just said. To be honest with you, it's probably gonna be just as effective. So how are you seeing India as a market? Have you seen any success story in India with the blueprint methodology? Absolutely. I mean, this is almost like a sales question, so I'll keep it short. But you know, these processes are universal. If you can speak and read and understand English, then you can take these and put them into effect. There's no difference really between the India algorithm and the US or UK algorithm for the most part. It's all just following best practices. So yes, people are having success with this methodology all over the world. Does not matter. Pratik asked, I run an affiliate website in health and fitness niche. I need help getting into big websites like Healthline. I'm already pitching the writers who write for them, but response is pale. What do you think I should do? So I've been circulating this document. I believe you're a full blueprint member, Pratik, so I'll just DM me and I'll get you access to it. We've done them quite a bit in the past, where we basically put together like a really good. The problem is if you're not able to get PR, press coverage, or even link coverage, and don't take this the wrong way, it's just because they're not interested in what you're pitching, right? If you want to get covered somewhere, there's generally speaking, there's a few things that will help you get coverage. Number one is having a really good story. So whatever you're pitching, if it's you're pitching a fitness website, if the founder has like, I don't know, like a traditional rags to riches story, that can be very interesting. Writers would want to cover about that. So if you have an interesting story to tell, try and focus on that story. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Hopefully you guys can hear that. So another one is would be to put together some sort of data set. So if you we did one in the past for a data set with it actually in the fitness space, where we put together like 100 bodybuilder, like every single bodybuilder that's won the Mr. Olympia contest in the last 50 years. We just basically scraped that information, put it together in a blog post, put together like a short 2-minute video, and then put that into a blog post. That was something interesting. Again, it had like the data points with it. It also had like kind of the social kind of like clickability, I got or just something that if somebody was scrolling down their Facebook newsfeed in a health website published it, people would click on it, right? You have to put yourself in the mind of the author, like somebody at Healthline, like what are they writing about and what do they want to write about? What type of stories are they seeking, and how can you help them to put something together that's going to drive clicks and eyeballs? Because that's what drives the internet. That's what drives those websites. So again, either put together a story, compile information, grab some unique data, things along that nature, and put it into a piece of content, and then take that piece of content and pitch that as your story. So as opposed to just trying to pitch them like a guest post, or just like, hey, can you link to me here? These are real websites. They're not from a link vendor. Like they need some sort of asset that they can talk about in their article and link back to yours. So that would be my advice. You can also shoot me a DM. I'll send you over that kind of like SOP that we have. And yeah, that should be able to help you out a little bit. Also, again, go through our link building modules, the outreach module. We do have some stuff in there, kind of like putting together assets, doing outreach. But it's the same core principles of outreach. It's putting together something of value. So you're still doing the prospect, and you're still doing the same type of outreach. It's just, you need to shift your pitch and your value proposition in order to get their attention the right way. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Cesar.
Not really. I'm not sure if I understood the question entirely. If you're pitching them for you to provide the content, you're probably better served getting on sites that are just easier for you to get on and showcase, and then put your best effort into those guest posts, just so you have a body of work. When you're pitching these sites, you can reference other websites that you've written for, so they get an idea of what you can bring to the table. Because especially for these big authoritative sites, it's kind of hard to get their attention if they don't know who you are, or if you don't have some sort of clout coming in. So you kind of have to work your way up to that level.
So Claudio asked, me and my partner just finished the free trial. We're setting the budget. Thank you for the great content. I was wondering what, thank you, first of all. I was wondering what your take on saying the marketing agency market was overflowing with new agencies, which makes the market harder to land clients since everybody's offering the same service. So basically asking about saturation of agencies. People actually ask me this question quite a bit, just in regards to the blueprint. Am I worried about selling the blueprint to a lot of people who are using the same thing? And the answer is no. The market is way bigger than you think. Just for context, this is also why I kind of love SEO when you compare it to like an advertising service, for example, is that not everyone's going to advertise because of the budget that it takes. I mean, SEO takes a budget too, but SEO has just become more of a professional service, meaning like if you have a website, one of their first thoughts is going to be like, I need to get found, I need visibility, and SEO is usually the first thought to do so. The amount of new websites that are going up every day is absurd. The amount of companies that are turning over agencies every day is absurd. I actually don't think that we've ever probably, for the most, I would say like 90% of our clients throughout history have come from another agency. So there's constant turnover. And that's the good thing about this, is that so many agencies out there do a poor job and a bad job that there's a market for people who are doing a good job. So I don't think that there's ever going to be an overflow, because at the end of the day, just the way markets work is the cream rises. So as long as you're continuously leveling up and getting better, then you're going to be rising to the top while everyone else is falling to the bottom. And there's plenty of business in between the slush, not just the new websites that are coming up, but also the websites that are turning over agencies at an absurd rate. Agencies are just known for not really being able to do the work. So you figure out your process, you figure out your client base, you do a really damn good job, and you're not going to have a problem with that. I don't know how you feel about it too, Cesar.
No, I mean, I agree. I don't really have anything to add there.
Yeah, Skylar says the market is big enough for all of us. 100% agree. Colm just asked, what's the difference between link book tracker file versus outreach management file? Use the new one. Just ignore the one. Ignore the link book tracker. Use the outreach management tracker. We talk about that quite a bit. So just use that one. Matt just asked again, what would you say increases the resale value of an SEO agency, PPC, or PR? What would you say is easier to add to your services and has better margins? So I'm going to say this too. Just knowing where you're at, Matt, and I know you personally now, so I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I don't even think you should be thinking about that yet. Like, you got to focus on one thing first, get the SEO down, and then like you'll know when it's time to add something new. Usually when, just in regards to if you want to start planning for it, I would say they're both equally as easy. It just depends on what you're currently doing. For example, like if you're doing a little bit more technical work, I would say PPC is probably easier because you're going to have more access to keyword data. PPC has also just become a little bit more of a technical service, whereas PR is a little bit more on the creative side, meaning left brain, right brain, meaning you got to be able to write pitches, put together stories, communicate just in terms of writing. It's a different type of person that you would hire for to manage that. But they're both equally as lucrative. They both will help your SEO business equally as well. Again, PPC goes hand in hand with SEO because it's all search engine marketing. It's something that I've always been hot on, is being able to offer both of them, because then you have a true search engine offering where you can manage both for people. And a lot of people are just comfortable. It's an easy pitch to be like, we're already doing your keywords for PPC or SEO. We already know what they are. Let's just buy them, or let's just optimize them organically. So those go hand in hand, but it's also the same thing with PR, where if you're already doing link building, then you can just offer PR and say, we're doing SEO link building for you, but what if we could get you on Forbes? Would that be something you'd be interested in paying a little bit more for? What if we can get you on Healthline? So they both work. PR is probably going to impact the just results of SEO more than PPC, but at the end of the day, they both go hand in hand. So either one that you would want to offer. Again, but just knowing where you're at, and for everyone else too, like focus on one thing. Focus. Get the SEO down, become the best in the world at doing that one specific type of SEO, and you'll know when it's time to expand. But it's not something that you want to overwhelm yourself with until you've really got that SEO pipeline, that funnel dialed in, where you have clients coming to you for SEO, and then you can upsell one or the other. And again, just focus on one thing. But Ian just asked, anytime, Matt, how to successfully handle the heavy lifting of client acquisition for startup SEO agencies without existing case studies? Good question. So basically, how do I sell clients? It's kind of like chicken and the egg. How do I sell clients when I don't have a track record? I think that what you want to do then is you compete on the quality of your work. just being able to sell the quality of your work. It's kind of like going to a job interview. Like if you went to a job interview, how would you sell yourself? It's kind of the same thing selling yourself when you don't have any case studies or track record, but you still should have information that's documenting your process, information that's documenting any website that you've worked on before in the past. Like you still want to have that and continuously build it over time, even if you don't have, you know, case studies or logos from reputable or recognizable websites. You still want to be working and putting something together that you can ultimately use as collateral during the sales process. In just regards to how to generate leads, I would just say just hit people up. You know, they're like DMing still works really well. If you have the right pitch, if you have the right targeting, and if you have kind of the right means to communicate with those people. So it can be tough when you don't have case studies. I'll 100% give you that, because this is a reputation-based industry. But if you can generate leads and sell through this, then you'll get the ball rolling and you'll be able to capitalize on that over time. Anytime, Matt. Steven just asked, have you guys incorporated the new internal link template David built out based on Kevin's tipper model into your deliverables? Cesar will be able to speak to this a little bit more. We actually, I know we recently did an internal link audit. I think Chris ended up doing it. Chris was on our agency team. But see, this is actually, we were going to talk about this today, but Kevin wasn't able to show up, and then we were going to have Cesar just come on and actually talk a little bit about how we're actually using that at practice at the agency.
Yeah, we haven't really done too much of those, but internal linking, that's, I think not just us, but that's kind of the thing that gets overlooked a lot. So we are doing more to incorporate that into our deliverables, but up to this point, it hasn't been something that we do on every single project. It's been more of a spot thing, but yeah, it makes sense to do it on virtually every project that you're working on.
Another question from M Team. We are 5 years through the business, but have all been all over the place. It's just in the last 6 months since we've been focused on SEO and things are getting into control. With SEO being our focus, should we start further niching down? We are still a 5-people team with 4 offshores contractors. We haven't started sales yet. That's a really difficult question for me to answer, just not having a little bit more context on kind of the history of your 5 years. But yeah, I mean, I would say definitely start, like if SEO is something that you guys feel like your team is adept in and you can deliver that, then I would say start with SEO. And if you feel like there's a specific space or niche or industry or vertical that you can exploit even further, then I would say absolutely. And you can just do that by just looking at kind of your track record. If you can't figure out what to do, or by just going out and just targeting specific ones. And especially if you're able to advertise, if you are able to do some outreach, then you should be able to pick up those questions. I'm sorry, you should be able to pick up those clients. Charlene just asked, love the free blueprint training. Thank you. Still on board to pull the trigger once another client signs on. We're not going anywhere, Charlene, don't worry. Do I have any ideas on how to generate SEO content for social media, AKA showing results, processes, etc.? Which platforms have you found to be the most beneficial for brand awareness and or conversion? So we've had great success, obviously, with YouTube. It's how a lot of people end up finding us. Videos has become the easiest and most scalable way for us to create content. And when I say us, I mean me, but now getting my team involved, hence like bringing Cesar onto a call like this. This is something that we have a lot more plans to do in the future, especially now, like post-COVID, where I think a lot of people get hung up on video because they think it has to be like professionally done and like scripted out. It really doesn't. People are now comfortable seeing like just the Zoom. It's not that big of a deal. It's just more about the quality of the information that you put out through it. I think more importantly though, what's more important than platform is the information that's contained within the content. If you want to get into the content space, which I think everyone in the SEO space should, you've got to be saying stuff of value, because people in this industry are a little bit fickle, they're a little bit aggressive, they're a little bit judgmental. And if you're not putting out stuff, then it's not only just going to get ignored, but I've seen them actually get kind of like torn down on Twitter, unfortunately. So what I would say is this: I would say if you feel like writing is your space, blogging still works really well. But if you feel like you can get on camera and do some video, you can do interviews, you can do podcast stuff like that, that works just as well. And then from there, it's less about the platform and it's just more about the medium that you're creating. So if you're doing video, then YouTube is going to be probably the space where that video lives. but video also does very well on LinkedIn. Video does well on Facebook. Video does well on Instagram. I would say Instagram is definitely probably the least important platform. YouTube YouTube and LinkedIn are the two most important organic platforms. But then if you have the budget to advertise, Facebook is going to be where to go. And then on top of that too, if you're doing blogging or content creation, LinkedIn is still a great place to republish content, both posting it natively, aka just writing in LinkedIn and posting it as a status update, and then also using it as a means to promote content and links. And then same thing with Facebook again. Like Facebook is really not an organic platform anymore. It's really meant for advertising. But if you can create the right content and promote it via advertising, which we talk about in the blueprint pretty significantly, we have a whole module on lead generation and how to advertise. Definitely go through that once you get inside, and you'll see how you can distribute that content a little bit better. But I think every agency in here, I don't necessarily force you guys to create content because I understand how laborious it is, and I also think that when you're a little bit younger as an agency, you should be focusing on your processes and focusing on your initial handful of clients to grow those and give them the best service possible. Once you're able to start marketing, then content is going to be a huge part of it. So they all work. It's just a matter of understanding what type of content you can create and that you can create regularly, and that you can have a true voice and add value in, whether that's blogging or video. And then, after that question will kind of answer itself in terms of where you should distribute it. So another question on backlinks. We are in the finance industry, and we always say to get backlinks from relevant industry websites. However, would you consider a backlink from a mommy blogger who writes an article about budgeting and links back to our website as relevant? I would say it's a very good backlink, but it's not the same industry, so I'm a bit conflicted. What are your thoughts? Cesar, do you want to address this?
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult sometimes to get a backlink from a website that is directly related to the type of site that you're working on without it not being a competitor. So when it comes to link building, we obviously look at metrics, the standard type of like domain authority and that sort of thing, but we're also looking at the keyword profile for these sites, because that usually gives you a good indication of sort of the topical relevancy of that domain. So the closer it is related to the target page or the target site, obviously the better. But ultimately, if you're getting a link from a real website, look at the live index, see how many pages they have indexed. That gives you a good indication as to, is Google crawling this site? Look at things like, when they publish content, is it getting indexed within a relatively short amount of time? So if something is published, like a week, does it take Google that long to find it, to crawl it, to index it? If you see that they have a bunch of articles on their blog and you can't find them in search, then it's probably not a site that is getting crawled that often. A link, it's going to take forever to get discovered, and you may not even see the benefit of that link for a long time. So really, it's just, in my opinion, it's more about finding sites that are active, that are being crawled, that are being indexed, that don't have, if you want to go as far as looking at, their top links, and just make sure that they're not, getting a bunch of spam links themselves. But a real website is a valuable link. Obviously, the closer you can get it related to your target site, the better and the more value that link is going to have. But I would still say there is value in the type of link that you're mentioning.
So Anonymous asked, do we as agencies manage websites for the clients, or just strategize and provide guidelines for the webmaster? It just depends on how you're set up. We at our agency do not manage websites for clients. There are some cases, I guess, where we will go in and make edits, but I think that's pretty few and far between, right, Cesar? I mean, if it's a WordPress website and they need like page titles changed, we can go in and do that. But for the most part, like, they're not paying us. We're not webmasters. We're not, sitting there looking at uptime and downtime and stuff like that. It's not what we're built to do. So it's not something that we offer. We've spoken about it quite a bit. We're always going back and forth in terms of how much how much white glove service do we offer in the sense of like how much done for you do we do versus how much strategy and consulting do we do. And we struck a pretty fine line where, you know, we don't write content, we don't change stuff on the website. Again, unless it's a WordPress website, then we can go through and, you know, like an hour or two and rattle off a whole list of changes. And that's really also only if the client just doesn't know what the F they're doing, which is getting less and less the case for us, because we're trying to target clients who do know how to do these things. So again, it can take the onus off of us, because these are the small things that, when it comes to, you know, managing resources and profitability at an agency, these things will creep up on you and kill your profitability. Like if you're not billing for these things and the client expects you to do a technical audit and then make all the changes, we're talking about upwards of like 20 hours worth of work to get all those things implemented. If they're not paying you to do that, then you can't do it. So it's really up to you. If you want to offer that, if you have the people and the capabilities to do so, by all means do it. Just make sure that you're charging for it. But also keep in mind that when a client sees how much you're going to charge for it, it might change their mind just about in terms of the overall retainer value. So these are just things that you're going to want to, again, deal with during the sales process. Make sure that you're continuously in touch with your operations team and just, you know, seeing how much work it could be. I don't know if you have anything to add on that, Cesar.
Well, what you said last is definitely something to be careful. We've fallen into that sort of trap where you just do this one thing, and then next thing you know, you're getting requests to do more and more things that start to fall out of scope. And then once you've given that much, it's hard to kind of pull back without hurting the relationship. So, like you say, we typically don't go in and do changes to the actual website. In some cases we have, I guess it really depends on the client, really, because sometimes if it's stuff like just changing page titles and it's not getting done, if it doesn't get done, ultimately you suffer because you're being judged on results. And if things that you're recommending are not being implemented, that's not a good thing for you either. So if you're capable of doing it and you're comfortable with doing it, and it's something that isn't going to, you know, require a developer where you're going in there and like changing the template code and that sort of thing, if it's something you could just do in the content management system, and it's more of just the client being lazy to get it done, I would probably do it. Again, just depending on the relationship you have with the client, just be cognizant of the fact that the more you do, the more you're going to be asked to do. And it might get to the point where, you know, you're giving a little bit too much. That's really all I would say.
David Martin just asked, what's up, David? Didn't know you were in here. Do you ever do any keyword research for YouTube videos? If so, what tools are you using? I don't. There's basically two kind of schools of growth on YouTube. If you look at like a lot of the SEO channels, they're going to tell you to do keyword research. But my opinion is that when you're just doing keyword research, it's not as sticky. You're going to get more views. You're probably going to rank pretty well. But YouTube is a retention platform, right? It's not like YouTube has the great ability to go wide, meaning that you can attract new people. If you get a viral video, it's going to get shown to a lot of people. But those viral videos are not based on keywords, right? Like I actually don't, so I don't waste my time doing keyword research because I'm much more topical based. Like I'm trying to deliver content to people that they need right now that's actually interesting to them. So really where YouTube success comes from is it's almost kind of crazy. And I had to have like a conversation with myself about getting out of my own way, because like if you just look at like, if you want to know how to have success on YouTube, like go look at the kids that have like tens of millions of views on YouTube. I'm not saying to go like stand in front of a car and get hit by it like they do, but I'm just saying like look at how they're using their thumbnails, like look at the stupid expressions on their faces, like look at what they're doing, like and also understand too, it's not about, like I said, it's not about the highest production quality video. It's not about that. It's about, YouTube is about retention. It's about getting people to click and getting people to watch the whole thing. And then ideally getting them to comment and engage with and share, etc. Which to me, if you're just doing keyword research, it's kind of like blog posts that just have keyword value. Somebody goes to it, they see what they need and they're gone. Like when I, for example, like I just today was looking up how to install my own on YouTube, how to install the Xfinity router. Like the video did exactly what I needed to, but like I watched 30 seconds of what I needed and I left, and I have no idea who that channel was. I would never subscribe to something like, you see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't necessarily, there's a fine line, right? There's of course certain videos that you can target and use keywords with, but for the most part, those aren't going to perform that well. Like YouTube is really about like having an opinion, putting out content that doesn't just help, but also like takes a side, makes an argument, resonates with a certain type of audience. And sometimes that means drawing a line in the sand. Unfortunately, I mean, we obviously live in a highly politicized climate right now where like people are on one side of the fence or the other, but like if you're in the middle, then you get no eyeballs and attention. It's just kind of a weird phenomenon that we're living through right now. So I would say don't get caught up too much in keyword research. Maybe do like a 50-50 split, or just create more content. You can do some that are targeting specific keywords that you think will help you grow. But for the most part, also like it's about building and nurturing that audience. So like a lot of YouTube growth and success is going to come like the very long, hard way of like manually promoting videos, building an email list and pushing it there, building a LinkedIn platform and pushing it there. That would be my advice on it. And again, I know that there's like a lot of channels out there in the SEO space that are telling you to do keyword research, but when you look at the retention and like you look at kind of like the engagement rate on a lot of their videos, it's in my opinion, it's not the best way to build an audience. So that's my thoughts on it. Patrick asked, how do you get around overzealous Google employees shutting down your cannabis brand's GMBs? I've tried multiple requests for GMB reconsiderations, but I can't get them approved again, despite competitors everywhere having zero issues. It feels like the GMB staff don't even read the emails. They don't read the emails. I don't have an answer for that. Google is notoriously bad for customer support. If you have GMBs, I don't know where you're coming from. If you're in Colorado, then it shouldn't be a problem. But if you have GMBs that in states where cannabis isn't legal, then I would imagine that there's just nothing that you can do. So I don't know, Cesar, if you have any, that's not really something that we do a lot of. We don't do much GMB optimization. And if like there's any sort of spam, then it's not something that we deal with at all.
It's been a while. I know, maybe I could look for it and drop it in the chat. Google, they actually have a number that you can call that I've actually called them to get GMBs verified, but I'm talking, this is probably like 2 or 3 years ago now. I don't know if that's still like the case, but I've actually verified GMBs in the past by calling them.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Umair asked, what are the minimum parameters like traffic, DADR, that you consider when the quality of the site you're building a link from? In short, how do I know if the site is really good? I just posted an entire training on this. It's in module 4.2. It talks all about how to vet the quality of a link. I also have a YouTube video on my channel if you want to look into it, but long story short, we're looking at traditional SEO metrics, DA, DR, etc., but that's not the end all be all. We're then also looking at just like overall website quality in terms of like, is this a real website, or is this clearly like a reanimated PBN that somebody is now calling a real website and just selling links on. So yeah, again, I would look into module 4.2. I've got a very, very, very specific dedicated question for that. Charlene recommends the book They Ask You Answer, really helpful for content creation. Thanks for the tip. Vadim just asked, Ryan, would you recommend hiring a high paid experienced SEO or finding motivated SEO execs with better experience in teaching them? From your experience, which is a better approach for a startup company in terms of efficiency? Well, in terms of efficiency, if you're looking for efficiency, you want to hire someone with experience. But if you're looking for cost, then you hire somebody who's less experienced. So, I think Cesar would probably agree with this. We've gone through both. When we first started Webris, we were definitely hiring people with less experience in training them, especially when you have the blueprint. Like you can just literally give it to people and they should be up and running, and then you just do a little bit of additional training on top of it. So that's really why the blueprint was built. But I think we're at the point now where we are kind of done with taking on, like, I don't want to call them projects because that's not the right word, but we're done with taking on people without experience because we just hired Chris, who's our lead content guy now. And he had experience. He'd been through the blueprint, and within a week, really not even within a day, he was pretty much up and running and able to jump in and do client work, as opposed to like, dude, when you hire somebody with no experience, you got to train them from the ground up. We're talking about months and months and months. So I prefer to hire people with experience now at this point. Bonus points for people who have already been through the blueprint, but that's just where we're at. So we do pay a little bit more of a premium for that, but at the same time, if you're open to international work, like Chris versus in the UK where the exchange rates from the US are slightly better, you know? So if you're open to remote work and not having everyone in the same place, then, you know, I would say hire experienced, you know, especially if you have access to the full blueprint. You know, just if they're experienced, they can get through the blueprint in a week and understand now what your processes and deliverables are. So that is what I would recommend. Does anybody, we're coming to the end, does anybody else have any more quick questions for us here? Pratik asked, our 301 negative impact, any 301 negative impact you've seen lately? Yeah, I mean, actually our website Webris is getting pretty much crushed in the SERPs right now because I've redirected too many pages, but I don't care because those pages didn't really hold any value to where we were trying to go as a company, and I got paid for them. So I was happy to exchange less traffic for a little bit of cash, and then also to refocus the website on content topics and rankings for where we really want to go. Corey just asked, what role did your project manager play in managing operations amongst your team? I think it depends. There, for the most part, when we actually don't have a PM right now. But when we had a PM in the past, it was really more for task management, just making sure, especially when you're working with, it was really on the link building side too, where there's a million moving pieces going day in and day out in terms of, you have prospectors, you have outreach people, you're dealing with link payments, you're dealing with all sorts of stuff. We would, Cesar just posted the GMB verification number in there also as well. They were really more just kind of like, I mean, project managers just keep everything organized, making sure that people were getting stuff done, making sure that things were getting sent to clients on time. So, I mean, it depends what again, it's always tough to look exactly what we're doing because we're in a different place. We have different people. So, I mean, it's really just kind of more like if they have the capacity and bandwidth to take on more stuff, then I would give it to them. And especially if they're capable and they show the interest in doing so, then I would give it to them. So for the most part, I would say PMs are definitely for organization communication, but if you want to get them more involved operationally on other side of things, then if you got a superstar, then I would say by all means do so. All right. A couple more questions just rolled in. Billy said, what KPIs are best to show clients for retention purposes? I'm not sure. Can you re-ask that, Billy? That's a little bit vague there, I think, in terms of what I need to answer for that. So somebody just asked again, if you started Webris all over again, what would you prioritize as a startup to scale as fast as you can? Thank you. We did just start Webris over very recently, and we were not able to take any clients. I was very fortunate that I was able to eventually hire Cesar over, but I wasn't allowed to take any people. The thing about agencies is that, like, you don't really scale that fast. I mean, it takes a while to get the ball rolling. There's no magic switch that you can kind of turn on when you have, we had to rebuild the website. We had to get everything back together. It took us like a solid 6 months, I think, to even kind of like get to a point where we could even call ourselves an agency again, right? Because there's roles that you need to fill. There's not really a switch. And then also COVID hit too. So, COVID hit like right as we were about to get up and running again. So it's really taken us a while to get our bearings back together, but as quickly as we want to grow, we're also just not in a rush because, again, like I kind of look at it like starting a fire, say if you're starting a little fire in the wilderness, like you got to be very careful to nurture that fire and get it to the point where it can grow and sustain on its own. Because if you don't, if you're too focused on growth and scaling and you don't have the right team in place, you don't have the ability to even deliver on what you're selling to clients, it's like in South Park, you're gonna have a bad time. Like it's so like it's not like the agencies do grow and scale, but it's not one of those things where it does not happen overnight. It takes months, if not years and years and years, to really get to the point where you're getting that kind of like snowball and hockey stick growth, just like with any business, but especially with agencies, because especially with SEO, it takes so long to get people time. I mean, we can be talking about a full year before you even really get case studies that you can speak on, because it takes sometimes that much time to get the type of results for clients. So, I think at first you just have to be patient, get in as many clients as you can and just do the best job possible for them. Make sure you have a team in place, make sure that you've got a process in place that you can grow and scale and deliver on that. And then it's just a matter of generating more leads for the company and selling them in. Problem. So we're out of time, guys. I actually have another call that I'm going to jump on. So there's 4 more questions that came in. We're going to be doing these at least twice a month now. I'm glad. I actually didn't think that we were going to get this many questions. I thought it was just going to be me talking to myself for a while. So save these questions. I promise we'll get to them another time. Make sure that you guys are tuning in the Slack channel to see these announcements. We're pretty much doing these exclusively through Slack now. I'm going to have Cesar join me as much as I can. I'm also going to have Skylar jump on and join me as much as he can. Again, just to answer any kind of slush questions that you guys have, especially full Blueprint members, to just give you as much face time with us as possible, help you iron out anything else. So again, make sure you're paying attention to Slack, and you can join us in the next one. Appreciate you guys coming out. Take care.